Hello, this is Dr. Dave Maslach talking to you about reciprocity.com. The E is written with a 3. And in this particular video, I want to talk to you about what do you actually do with a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you don't know, I'm a professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship. This whole reciprocity project is me giving back as much as I can. So I created this sort of sharing economy proofreading application. And it's all trying to help out other sort of people that are interested in doing research and going in getting a PhD. And this is one thing that a lot of people would think about. And I didn't really know when I was 24 years old and I was interested in doing a PhD in strategy. At the time, they didn't have a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship in a lot of different places. So strategy was the field I went into. And by the way, if you didn't know that, you can watch some of my other videos. You can go into do different degrees that kind of do the same thing, and you just kind of have a little twist on it. So what do you do with a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship? So most people would think you go into industry or you create some sort of new innovative thing, right? But this is absolutely not true, and it's rarely the case that that happens. So sometimes people do go into industry after this, and it is changing. There are more people going into industry right now after doing a PhD in some sort of field of business administration, so particularly innovation and entrepreneurship. But what most people do is they go into academia and they become a business school professor of some sort, right? So they're going to teach innovation and entrepreneurship at a business school around the world. Very few, so first of all, very few are going to go and start their own business. And some do. And it's always a positive when they do that kind of stuff, right? Particularly if it's kind of on the side, then people sort of see, oh, you understand entrepreneurship. But most of the time you have to be very research focused, and very few are going to, get patents and things like that, create their own particular technologies. That is pretty rare. Most people are going to be focused on doing research and writing papers, and that's just because of the way that the incentives are aligned. In academia, you get rewarded for writing papers, particularly in a business school. So the majority of people will end up being business school professors, or they might teach in an engineering school. That does happen. There's engineering schools around the world. I can think of a few within the United States that do this. There's also a few within the UK and Canada that do this, where you would be a professor of engineering, and they're just looking for people that are doing innovation and entrepreneurship research. So it's kind of nice because you can kind of straddle those things. But in an engineering school, there's complications compared to teaching or becoming a professor in a business school, because you're required to write grants and things like that. It's less common in a business school, although it's important. I'm not discounting it, but it's just less common, as that's kind of a core activity that you're going to do. So they are good careers. Once you get into these particular careers and you become a professor and you're a tenured professor, it's a pretty good career. But there is some significant hurdles to cross to get there. And you can watch some of my other videos where I talk about these kind of things. And the major reason is it's just extremely competitive in academia. It is probably one of the more competitive fields. I have colleagues that have been, people that are major, that they were in law. I personally was in engineering, and any particular, medicine, for example. And I'll just say it's just as competitive and difficult to do these to be an academic in a business school as it is in any one of these careers. It's no difference. So the conception of you thinking that, it's so much more crazier in being in corporate law, it's going to be the exact same thing in academia as well. And if not, it's probably even worse, because you have to think of yourself as a sole proprietor, and you're building your own business doing that. So you have to do activities to build your own business in that area. So I won't get into that, but that's really what you should be thinking about when you're doing when you do a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship. So the people that go into industry when they do a terminal degree, it's generally people that do what is called a DBA degree or an executive doctorate of business. So if you're interested in doing that, those are the kind of degrees that you should probably be looking at, or maybe even executive MBA. And really it's just an extra, so an executive DBA or an executive or a Doctorate of Business Administration, you get the same education as you would as a PhD, but the focus is different because you're being trained to go into industry or go into consulting after that. So you might have less of a demand to do research. You're still going to understand the whole research game. The project is probably going to be a little bit smaller. You can watch some of my other videos where I do talk about that. So what kind of people actually get a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship? Generally, these are people that are very interested in some particular aspect of it, and they just want to dig down, and they're just kind of curious people. And, they're highly competitive, obviously, and you are interested about that particular field. What you're going to do is you're going to study things from sort of the main fields that we think about, like psychology and sociology and economics. And sometimes you might study something in engineering, depending on what field you're doing. So MIS, for example, you might study some components of engineering or database design and things like that. But a lot of it's going to be your social sciences, and we're just social scientists in a business school, and that's really what we're thinking. We study organizations, for example, or we study markets. So there's virtually little difference between any particular one of these fields. Some people that do study algorithms and things like that in a business school, which are people that do that kind of stuff, they're going to be much more on the quant side. So they're going to be, they have a good understanding of mathematics. You're going to understand statistics and mathematics and things like that. And those people there are some people in innovation and entrepreneurship that do study it in that kind of way, right? So it doesn't rule that out in any sort of way. Now, from me and my sort of perspective, if I was to do a PhD again, and I'm just being totally honest, you might be wondering, would I do it again, right? So as a professor right now, I made it all the way through. So to be honest, I've asked myself this many different times, and you probably will ask a lot of different people. Currently right now, it's a really nice life, and I enjoy it. My family we're doing, as a family unit, we're doing honestly pretty good. But the problem is that there's significant cost to get there, to get a PhD, and there's a very large selection effect that happens. So lots of people just don't make it. So if I account for all of that stuff, it makes it a much more difficult decision. For example, for me, for personal choice, I sort of did my own financial calculation. My break even is when I'm 55. Maybe it's changed since I did that. I don't know, but generally it's pretty long. And, it's 20 years out by the time you actually break even financially to do this particular career. Now, I get to choose what I want to do and study, and, I get to do something weird like this, right? And I choose my lifestyle. There's all sorts of things. So, but I think for me, the decision really depends upon what your current lifestyle is and who you are as a person. So if you're very curious, then it's a pretty good career that way, because you can sort of study weird things and go in all directions if you want to some degree. And then what your current lifestyle is, if you're making millions of dollars at the thing that you're currently doing, that's going to be a big jump to go become, it's going to be a decrease significantly to do a PhD in business administration. So that's the kind of thing that you have to trade off, and you have to think about and make a sort of rational choice. If I was to sort of do this again, I would have looked a little bit deeper into these sort of pros and cons, which I have a lot of videos on all that kind of stuff. You can watch that. So that's all I want to talk about with this video. Hopefully this is helpful for you in terms of figuring out what do you do as a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship. Oh, by the way, what our main goal is, and what we're trained to do as academics, is write papers and do research. So that's the key thing that we should be doing, is reading, writing, and arithmetic. So that's all I wanted to talk about. Hopefully you like this video. Give me a thumbs up, and do subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right, take care.